Hello everyone and welcome back to the Wandering Cantos. Today's video is only for serious tea drinkers, so if you're not a serious tea drinker, feel free to scroll away because this isn't for you. And I also wanted to give a brief spoiler warning for different tea flavors. This video is going to be spoiling what they taste like. So without any further ado, I think we can jump right into it. All right, so I've got my tier list up on the screen here. And as you can see, there are a bunch of royalty-free photos that I made in Aseprite down below. So, they may seem a bit cryptic to you, but they each represent a different blend or, flavor of tea. Now you're probably wondering, how did I pick these flavors of tea? What was the criteria? The criteria was what tea they had at my local market. So this is by no means an exhaustive list. And honestly, maybe one day we'll make a sequel if I'm able to find different teas, or in a different season, there's some different seasonal blends. But for now, what we've got is what we've got. So we're going to start off strong with a caramel apple tea. Now, this is a black tea mixed with a chamomile tea, and then it has notes of caramel and apple. Thing is I've had this in the past, and I swear I never liked it. I always thought it tasted weird. But recently, I think I made it with the right mix of milk and a little bit of sugar, so it's a much more creamy drink. And I'm going to give it an A. Here's the thing. It smells a little too buttery to get a score higher than A. Like, it doesn't smell like caramel butter. It just smells like butter, which is a little brutal when you're lifting the cup to, your lips to take a sip. That being said, once you've actually tasted it, it's quite delicious. And does it taste like a crisp caramel apple like other drinks? No, not really. If anything, the apple, it's not really like you notice an apple flavor and then a caramel flavor. It's just much more like sort of the illusion of a caramel apple. Sort of like I'd imagine a caramel apple candy. Have you ever had one of those like Werther's caramel apple, just caramel bites where it just looks like a piece of caramel candy? There's no like actual apple in it, it's just apple flavoring. It's a lot more like that. But in terms of teas and a nice hot drink, it's pretty goated, and that's why we're giving it an A, because it is, like I said, it's when mixed with the right amount of milk, it's almost like a weird caramel apple like tea latte, like the equivalent of a London Fog. So quite delicious. All right, and after that we have a chai green tea. Now, I'm looking through my notes on this, but to be honest, I don't even think I need my notes because I remember how bad this was. I should also say, for preface, I did this quite scientifically. I'm pretty proud of myself. So after purchasing all of these teas, I proceeded to get every mug and teacup I had in my cabinets, every thermos, etc., and I set them all out on my kitchen counter and brewed 1 cup of each of them all at once, and I went down the line sipping them, and I wrote down my notes. So quite scientific. Chai green, however, is truly a good example of when science goes too far, and I think they got a little too interested in if they could make something, and they never paused to think, should they make something? Chai green, I don't know why it exists. I don't know why I got it, and I don't know why it exists. Because I don't know why someone would think to mix this sort of cinnamony, spiced chai flavor with the light and delicate flavors of a green tea. This was just genuinely horrible, so I'm going to give it a D ranking. So after that, we have the chai spiced apple. Now, this one was really, really enjoyable. I have to give a bit of a preface though, and I guess this sort of has to do with my previous rating for the chai green. I don't mind a chai tea. I think a chai tea latte, for example, is quite enjoyable. I actually like the flavor of chai. That being said, I'm not a big fan of the smell. I think it's a little too aromatic and strong in a way, if that makes sense. Have you ever had it where, you're like brewing a cup of tea and the second the hot water hits it, it's just like immediately fills the room with its sort of aroma? That's chai for me. And I'm not a big fan of things that, have that strong of a fragrance, let's say. So with this one, here's what's pretty interesting. Not crazy about the smell because, you're holding the cup up, you're letting it cool down, and all you're getting are just the notes of chai. You're just smelling chai tea. You would not know that it was a spiced apple. When you actually take a sip from it, however, it ends up being quite delightful. And you know how earlier the caramel apple, I mentioned how there wasn't really strong notes of apple in it? With the chai spiced apple, you can actually really taste sort of like the crisp sweetness of the apple on the tip of your tongue. Which is extremely enjoyable, and I'm going to give it an S. This is a tea that I will be returning to time and time again, to the point that I don't really know if I'll ever go back to just a normal chai, because this adds a level of complexity to the tea that now, if I were to go back to chai and it doesn't have that level of complexity, I think I would just find it sort of boring and a little too much, again, sort of just a spiced flavor. All right, so now we have the chamomile rose tea. So this one was actually a blend I got, which I believe is in a collaboration with the Netflix show Bridgerton. Not familiar with the show. I saw a bit of the first season because I tend to like the 19th century, as frequent channel visitors will know. But I wasn't really a fan of the show that much. That being said, I don't discriminate when it comes to teas because ultimately I just read what the description of the actual notes and flavors are on the side of the box. But I do want to take a moment to pause and say that I do like the idea of tea collaborations. And I wish there were tea blends that were made for IPs I'm more interested in, because on a parasocial level, I do think it's kind of fun to drink a tea that is, quote unquote, authorized or endorsed by the character as being like their either favorite tea blend or a tea blend that's supposed to, capture the heart and spirit of that character. And I remember after I saw this and I brewed a cup, I looked into it, and for example, there apparently was some Persona 5 teas, but this was like 5 years ago, and so I missed the boat on that. But I feel like that would have been cool to get to taste the different teas and sort of then like reflect on how the flavor notes might reflect the character. Again, whether it's the character enjoys that flavor or if it's supposed to be capturing their soul and essence, where a hot-headed character might have more notes of cinnamon and I don't know, maybe some sort of pepper in it or something like that. But anyway, I'm unfortunately not actually familiar with the character that this chamomile rose tea comes with. But so the actual full blend is chamomile, rose, hibiscus, and white hibiscus, and bits of apple, and I believe some natural strawberry flavors. And I gotta admit, this has quickly become one of my all-time favorite teas, and I've been drinking it like it's my job ever since I had it. And the thing for me is, previously, and it's not on this tier list, but I had like chamomile, vanilla and honey blend, and I've always thought that was all right, kind of depended on the mood I was in, but I never quite loved it. And I'm realizing in retrospect, I think what I wasn't liking was the vanilla, I don't know, I guess probably artificial vanilla notes they had in it, or potentially the honey. It always kind of had just I don't know, a weird mouth taste. This one, however, is quite delightful. It's both refreshing and soothing at the same time, because it's a nice hot tea. It's very like a calming tea, no caffeine, etc. But the notes of strawberry. So here's the thing: when you just take the actual tea bag out of its, container, it sort of has a strong aroma to it in a sort of very unenjoyable way, which I believe is the dried strawberries potentially, or whatever they're doing for the strawberry notes. It's a bit of a sickly sweet smell, like a little too much. But the actual tea doesn't have that smell, and when you're drinking it, that strawberry shows up in a really nice, pleasant way that I would not have expected. So, kind of reminds me, I was watching some show, I think it was an anime, but I don't remember which one, and the characters talk about how sometimes they'll take a bit of strawberry jam and stir it into their tea. And this, when I saw it at the time, because it stood out to me enough, because I thought that sounded terrible. I don't like adding a lot of sugar to my teas and whatnot, and so the idea of adding like an actual jam and the consistency that would have on the tea and everything just seemed terrible to me. But having had this, I may be a new convert, and I actually kind of want to try stirring in some strawberry jam just to see what it's like. So this one is getting an S. This one is probably, like I said, my favorite tea of all time. I drink this now as much as I can. All right, which leads us to another strong contender, which is the Earl Grey. So previous to doing this tier list, Earl Grey was one of my go-to teas. I remember when I first started trying tea when I was, much younger, I would add some milk to it, and I never quite liked it, and I always felt like it dried my mouth out a ton. And that is when I learned two things. One, you shouldn't really add milk to Earl Grey, or at least don't add cold milk, because it can curdle the bergamot in it can curdle the milk. But also, you got to be careful with your temperatures and not oversteeping it. It turns out, if you oversteep tea, it has a bitterness that also sort of dries out your mouth and makes it just an unpleasant experience. So this was sort of the tea that I learned, the art of tea, let's say. But ever since then, it's been one of my favorites. It's always especially enjoyable if you have a fresh lemon. You can sort of do a thin slice of and have it floating on the surface. But even without that, the bergamot kind of gives it a citrusy taste and very enjoyable. I'm trying to think though, is it an S rank? Because I don't want to give too many S ranks, because obviously I'm a big tea fan, but I feel like it has to go S, because whenever I have it, it's just a proper cup of tea. I don't think I've ever had Earl Grey betray me once I actually learned how to make it right. I also feel like Earl Grey's a great tea after you have anything sort of rich. So if you just had, a slice of cake, or honestly, even if you had like cereal with milk and you just had like a very creamy thing, or a heavy breakfast, or any situation like that, Earl Grey is great because it's like a total palate cleanse and also cuts the sort of sweetness and heaviness of a sort of creamy food. So it's just like a perfect, dessert tea in a way. Whereas English breakfast, which is our next contender, come on, we gotta know where English breakfast is gonna land, because it is the most tea of teas, and it is sort of just reliable. It's there. It's, it's sort of so basic in a way, but its basicness is also its superpower, because it's sort of the tea that you can just drink ad nauseum without ever actually reaching nauseum. It's truly just a It's just a workman's tea. You know, you wake up in the morning, you have a cup of English breakfast. You can also have it at nighttime. It works any time of the day, and it's just reliable. It's loyal, you know, it's trustworthy. You're never going to get betrayed by English breakfast. A bit of milk, a bit of sugar, just a little bit of sugar, and it's just perfect. So that one has to get an S. I mean, that is just it's sort of the king of teas if you think about it. So now that we've just talked about, you know, such a phenomenal tea, I think we've got to talk about Honeybush Mandarin Orange Tea. Now, as someone who enjoys Earl Grey tea, I went into this thinking, I bet I would like other citrusy teas, because again, I like the lemon in Earl Grey. Like if you squeeze lemon juice into it or add a lemon slice. I like the bergamot. I like the combination of sort of the black tea with the citrus. So I thought citrus teas have got to just be good. You know, you drink tea to sort of soothe your throat sometimes if you're sick or something like that. And a nice warm citrusy drink. It sounds perfect. That being said, I did not enjoy this tea. I tried it as a hot tea because, as I said, that was sort of the system I used for this entire process. But that being said, I have to give it some credit in that it might be better iced. I think it was recommended on the box you could either have it hot or iced, and if I were to try it again, and I ultimately will have to because I'm not going to let any of this tea to go to waste. I'm going to have to drink all of this, even if it's a D rank, even if it's chai green, I'm going to have to drink it down. This one might be better iced, but my notes for this one is that the smell of it smells a lot like when you have sort of orange rind and juice on your fingers after you chop up a bunch of oranges, if you've ever done that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Normally that sort of fresh orange smell is actually quite nice, but in a tea, it's just a little less enjoyable. It's a little unexpected in a way. And which makes me think that what I don't like about this might actually be the mandarin notes, because I feel like that actually has the most sort of orange rindy essence. I know you probably think it's probably the orange, but I actually kind of think it's more the mandarin. But yeah, this one has to get D though, because it just wasn't good. I wasn't excited about the prospect of finishing a whole cup of it. That being said, I do want to make a note that it could be redeemed by getting iced. I'll have to try that eventually, and maybe I'll like pin a comment with an update afterwards if I think it should be moved up or not. Now, that leads us to the next citrusy one, which is I Love Lemon. This one, I don't have all my notes for it in terms of, I don't remember why it's like so lemony. I don't know if it's like, I feel like it's like a triple lemon, but anyway, it is as it sounds. You're only going to love this if you love lemon, and because it just tastes like hot lemon water. That being said, I love lemon, so I actually quite enjoyed this one. This one I found to be quite refreshing, and I'm also excited to try it iced. And, you know, it's just lemony. It's a hot lemon drink. I feel like it would be good in the summer, especially iced, but it also would be good also as a sort of palate cleanser. Could be a good dessert wine, and also seems to be like a go-to if you're having a sore throat or something. But I'm going to give this one, I'm trying to think if it's an A or a B, because I did enjoy it, but I haven't, after having had it, I haven't like sprinted to go have more. I feel like it's sort of like a context one, which makes me, I'm actually going to put it at B. I feel like, because, you know, do I think it's on the same tier as like the caramel apple tea? No. But I do think it's a decent tea. And if you enjoy citrus teas at all, I do recommend it. Now, you may have guessed what the next tea is. And if you have, then that means that you probably understand that I may have gone a little too much in the direction of citrus teas. Might have gone a little carried away, might have gotten a little too excited about it. So the next tea is a Lady Grey. So Lady Grey is sort of described as being a bit more of a mellow version of an Earl Grey. And I believe instead of bergamot notes, it's lemon notes. Which, would maybe have you think, okay, all right, so, this guy likes I Love Lemon, and he also likes Earl Grey. So this has got to be an S tier tea. I would caution you from thinking that way. This tea, in my opinion, especially as a fan of the Earl Grey, just feels like a watered down Earl Grey. Kind of just tasted like I was having Earl Grey, but with less flavor. And as a result, I didn't really like it that much. I did note it as being a C1 because it's not like offensively bad as I would rate, a D tier one. And I will finish the box of drinking it, but I don't think I'll ever be looking forward to it. While I said like the I Love Lemon, if the context is right and the time is right, like it'll truly be a delicious tea. This one, I just feel like every time I'm going to drink it, Lady Grey, I'm going to be wishing I was just having Earl Grey. So bit of a disappointment. I was sort of looking forward to the idea of having a more mellow, because I don't really like bitter teas. So, the idea of having a Earl Grey that's maybe even a little less strong, and with, again, as someone who loves putting a slice of lemon in Earl Grey, having what basically seems like an Earl Grey that's flavored with lemon instead of bergamot. It seems like it would just, be an easy win, but no, I'm gonna have to give it a C. Which now brings us to mint. I think mint is probably at least a little bit of a controversial flavor. Because mint tea, I feel like some people love it and some people hate it. And I don't even know if you could really call it an acquired taste if you don't like it. Because it's such a distinct flavor. Going into this, I would say mint was one of the ones I was the most nervous about trying, just because I just feel like it could either be refreshing or the worst thing ever. It just seems like when I'm having any of these teas, mint is not the thing that I was ever craving. I never thought, ooh, it would make English breakfast better or I Love Lemon better, some mint. But I feel like I've added mint, or at least a mint extract, into a couple things like milkshakes and whatnot. And it's been sort of nice. So I didn't know how I'd feel. I gotta admit, this one did not land for me. As soon as I held the cup up to my lips, all I could smell was just toothpaste. It just felt like someone took hot water and then squeezed a ton of toothpaste into it and then stirred it in until it dissolved. I could not get over the association with toothpaste, which makes me wonder if I had somehow gone my whole life without ever having mint toothpaste and I had, bubblegum toothpaste or something like that, would I have liked mint tea more? I just don't know, because on the one hand, it's sort of refreshing, but it's also just mint. I feel like peppermint probably would actually be a bit more enjoyable, because then it tastes like a candy cane in theory, which, is a bit more of a candy, sort of a sweeter taste. But just mint, I gotta give it a D. Which leads us to oolong tea. This is the one I think I was the most nervous about trying, and I did not plan this order, by the way. I made all of these thumbnails and then just dragged and dropped them in at random. So I feel like I started with all the strong teas and I've slowly been getting to the weaker and weaker ones. But this one, I had known that it was sort of strong and that it was sort of a smoky taste, and I felt like it was less strong than I was thinking, to the point that it almost, when I was actually drinking it, felt like it didn't have a lot of flavor. It smelled strong, but the actual flavor, but I don't know if I just had too much tea at that point. But yeah, with this one, it kind of just tasted like the bottom of a cup of coffee. You know, when you're like drinking coffee and then you have that little bit at the end and it gets a little too cold on you, and so the flavor of the coffee is different. Now my tea was hot, but I feel like the flavor of hot coffee that's gone to room temperature has a certain flavor to it, and then kind of the gritty, you know, graininess of the bottom of a cup of coffee. Again, didn't actually have that texture, but I feel like it just kind of had that flavor. It just reminded me of that last sip of coffee, and it smelled smoky. The hard part is, since it didn't actually taste as smoky as I was worried about, it wasn't as offensive in that way. So I don't think I can properly give it a D. But at the same time, I'm not really looking forward to ever drinking it again. But if I was forced to, or if I was at a friend's house and they were like, brewed some tea and this is what they had, I don't know if I'd be that worried about it. So I think I'm going to give that one a C. So yeah, that concludes the first tier list Tuesday video. So yeah. If you're probably thinking Tier List Tuesday, I thought it would be sort of fun to sort of differentiate some of my content. Some of my content takes a lot of time and effort, and it's much longer videos, which I think can sometimes be intimidating for the audience. And so I wanted to also make some that are just sort of fun and I don't know, you can, have a cup of tea and watch along sort of thing. So I'm hoping to make this a semi-regular series as well, just so we can sometimes have some kind of more casual videos that aren't as in-depth of analysis of, annotating song lyrics and poetry and all of that. So yeah, that concludes my tier list. I would love to hear what your rankings are, because obviously I know it's some of these teas that I ranked low may in fact be your favorite tea. And you're probably also thinking, where's just normal green tea? Or, where is normal chamomile tea and some other ones? Like I said, this was just the amount of boxes I could afford and had access to at that particular time. Eventually, maybe I may make another mix where I have some of these teas and then a new lineup of other teas and sort of mix them. And then maybe ultimately, once I have access to, the full regular collection of what you would think would be the standard lineup, I could do that as sort of the final conclusion in a trilogy of tier lists. But yeah, let me know what you think of these, where you would rank them. Has anyone else had that Bridgerton tea especially? It's a limited edition tea, so if you have any interest in it, I would definitely recommend trying to get your hands on it as soon as possible, because it's quite enjoyable. But yeah, let me know where you would rank these, and also if you have any ideas of, something else you'd like me to make a tier list on, let me know. I'm always open to, ideas and suggestions. I kind of have a list of some other stuff I thought would be fun to cover, but like I said, I'm always open to other options. So yeah, with that, I think I'll wrap this one up. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.